thegearnetwork.com.
The following is a presentation of the Gear Radio Network.
Hey, this is Kip Winger, and you're listening to the All Bets Are Off podcast with Robbie Vegas.
What's up, rock soldiers? This is the Rockstar Robbie Vegas with another brand new episode of the All Bets Are Off podcast. I thank you once again for joining me. We've been doing a lot of rock and roll talk here lately, minus the Montreal Screwjob, of course. And today, we have Michael Thomas. Michael is the guitarist of Adler's Appetite, former guitarist of The Beautiful Creatures, and just released a new single called Take Me. So we're going to be talking about all of that today, and before I get him on the line here, I need you guys to once again give us a follow on social media, ABAO Pod on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. And please, if you listen to us on Spotify, Apple, Google, wherever you listen to this podcast, please subscribe and go in and rate the podcast. It helps us out with the algorithm, makes us pop up for other people who are searching for similar podcasts. So please leave us a 5-star review, and if you feel so inclined, leave us a rating as well. I appreciate all you guys, and this is Take Me by Michael Thomas. We'll do a little sneak peek at that, and then we will get him on the line and get this interview rolling.
Living a life you thought you could take, but those things you want, they aren't always what you need. Lies and the truth, they're one and the same. When the hope's not enough and you're down on your luck, yeah, it feels like you're losing the game. But those things you want, they aren't always what you need. When you go, I wanna make steps in your stride, chasing Lucy across the sky, fire down a light. Won't you please take me on the loose, run a wild, wanna be by your side while the world tries to catch just like Bonnie and Clyde. Won't you please take me, take me.
So, Michael, I really appreciate you being here on the All Bets Are Off podcast. I know you're a busy guy, so this means a lot to me. Appreciate it.
Oh, I'm happy to be here, Robbie. Looking forward to talking with you.
Well, then let's just dive right in, and I want to know how you discovered that you had a deep love for rock and roll.
Deep love for rock and roll, man. You know, that started at a really early age. So, as a kid, I was fascinated by bands like Kiss, AC/DC, those classics, those larger-than-life bands. Mm-hmm. And, honestly, I think it was not just the music, but it was the almost like, say, superhuman, almost like superhero look of, the Kiss situation with the makeup and the costumes and, the pyro. And it was just, dude, it was mesmerizing as a kid.
It's so funny that every time I have a different musician on, and even goes for myself, Kiss is the common denominator between everybody. Everybody is always like, well, Kiss started everything for me. I'm a huge Kiss fan. Are you still a huge fan of Kiss to this day?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. As a matter of fact, I played on the Kiss Cruise 2019.
Really?
So, yeah. I was out with Steven Adler of Guns N' Roses, mm-hmm. and honestly, it was like a dream come true because being a lifelong Kiss fan, out of all the artists that I work with and all the tours that I've done, I never had a chance to go out with Kiss. So to be able to do the cruise and then be on the boat with those guys for, a whole week was amazing. So that was like a super highlight of my career just because it meant so much to me as a kid.
Oh, that's awesome. Now, I got to ask you, too, so this is going to be a really hard question, which is I ask every single person that comes on the show, do you have a favorite Kiss record? Can you actually pick one?
Man. As far as one record, dude, I can't, because they have so many classic songs over a span of so many incredible records, right?
Yeah.
So artistry wise, like one of my favorite covers is Love Gun.
Mhm.
And I don't know. I mean, it's hard for me just to pick one album. I don't know if I could,
Yeah.
to be honest.
It's one of those things where Kiss fans start breaking it down by like different eras. Well, you got to go the non-makeup, and you got to go Eric Carr versus Eric Singer versus Peter Criss, and you got to go Bruce Kulick versus Ace Frehley. You can break it down a million ways.
Right? You really can. So I don't know how you could come to I don't know how you can come to a conclusion on that one, because there's just too many factors.
I mean, I tend to agree with that. So I got to ask then, how old were you when you actually were like, I think I want to start playing an instrument. I think I want to get into this.
So I was like 10 years old when I first started playing guitar. And I had a buddy of mine, and he was starting to learn how to play guitar, and he had a couple laying around the house, and his mom was really into rock and roll, right? So I remember when I was 10 years old, I was living in the Bay Area, San Francisco Bay Area, and she took us to a concert on New Year's Eve at the San Francisco Cow Palace. It was the Dio Holy Diver Tour.
Oh,
So it was
wow.
Dio, YNT, and Dokken.
Oh my God.
So at 10 years old, man, this is my first concert. And that was it. I was hooked. And like the very next day was like, I got to start playing guitar,
Wow.
Yeah, so I was 10. And at first it didn't really stick, right? So in all honesty, I had the stars in my eyes and I wanted to learn how to play guitar. But at that age, you have such a short attention span. And the way you approach lessons is really kind of going to dictate if you fall into it hardcore or if it just is a little too overwhelming.
Mhm.
So that first guitar kind of went in the closet for a year or two. And then actually at the age of 12, I started taking lessons again. And that's when I got serious, because I had this great instructor that made things really easy to understand. And it was like very practical. By the end of the first lesson, I had learned a riff and I could kind of play it, and just all the dots connected, So I think good teachers make all the difference.
Oh yeah. That's awesome too. I mean, what a cool mom to take you guys to a concert like that. And I mean, your parents had to be okay with it too if you were there. So were they like rock and roll parents as well?
My parents are super, super cool, but not rock and roll. Like they wouldn't be going to the Cow Palace on New Year's Eve for sure. So I kind of lucked out on that one, man. And, it's back in the day and going to this concert with my buddy and his hot rock and roll mom. And yeah, it was awesome. It was a super fond memory. Hey, you want to hear something super weird about that though?
Absolutely.
So, that night, YNT were the direct opener for Dio.
Okay.
And at that time, I'm not sure if you're familiar with YNT, but they were a Bay Area band. So my manager that I would end up meeting X amount of years later was actually there drum teching for Leonard Hayes, the drummer of YNT,
Wow.
that night. Yeah, so how crazy is
That
that?
is
So
full circle
my manager
moment.
to be years and years down the road was actually there working that show as a drum tech, and I was a 10-year-old kid in the audience.
That is amazing. That's a full circle moment right there.
Yeah, it was really cool.
Wow. So how long does it take you, from the time you get serious with your lessons around 12 before you jump into your first band?
So not too long, man. I had other buddies that played music growing up, and so we were so passionate about it and so caught up in just playing every day and practicing that by 8th grade, I think 7th or 8th grade, we had formed a band. And there was a music class, and so we'd be there, and one of the assignments in the music class was to put together a band and record a song. So they had a little 4-track recorder at the school.
Oh, wow.
So we ended up writing an original song, and we ended up performing that song in the school auditorium at lunchtime.
Come on.
So we knew that song and 2 or 3 others, right? And we launched into the tune, and all of a sudden, the auditorium was full of kids, and there's heads peeking through the door and lined up to the top of the door. And I just remember thinking, this is what I want to do. It just hit me right then. So we ended up playing throughout that lunch hour in the auditorium, and probably played the 3 or 4 songs that we knew twice, 3 times to just keep jamming.
Yeah.
And that was it, man. So that was the first band. And then throughout high school, I had different incarnations of bands and buddies that we went out and did shows. So I played in bands pretty much from 8th grade and from then forward.
Wow. And now, are your inspirations still staying the same? Like, you're still, Kiss and Dokken and like bands along those lines, or are your taste changing around this time?
Well, I mean, at that time, no, it was straight ahead, just all rock and roll,
yeah.
Right? And, I grew up during a period of some like really cool rock and roll music. So what was really crazy for me was the fact that I grew up listening to these bands like Guns N' Roses and Faster Pussycat and LA Guns and Dokken and all these guys that were really influential, on me growing up as far as, playing guitar. And then eventually all these years later, touring, recording, and working with all these guys. So that's super bizarre, man. But really cool. So very heavily influenced in rock during that time period. And then I think as you get older, you start to experiment with different types of music. So I really started listening to everything, and my taste became very eclectic. But I also think that's good because, when you listen to different styles and varieties of music, you've got more paintbrushes in the paint box to pull from, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And I think it makes you just a much more well-rounded artist. And, it got me a lot of studio gigs that I probably normally wouldn't have done. I mean, I've been very lucky. I've worked with pretty crazy diverse range of artists, everything from rock, as you know, to a lot of pop stuff with like different folks from American Idol and The Voice to doing a song with Snoop Dogg, of all people, in a music video. So, I mean, that was cool. I've got to work with some great producers as well. So I think with the branching out of the musical taste and the styles, it really afforded me some luxuries and a lot of really cool gigs.
I got to ask you, how did that Snoop Dogg thing come about, and which music video was that?
So that was for a band called Anchored, and they were based out of Dallas, Texas. They were my opening act one summer when I was out with Steven Adler of Guns N' Roses. And I just became really good friends with the guys, and we kept in touch. They went on to go out on tour with Black Label Society for a number of months, and then after that they were out with Volbeat. And at the end of the Volbeat tour, they called me up and they said, "Hey, we're working on our second record. We've heard your songwriting, and would you be open to coming out to Dallas and helping us write this second record?" So my schedule was open at the time they wanted to get together, so that worked out. And I showed up and they said, "Hey, okay, so we have one high priority item, and that is we're doing a collaboration with an artist, so we need to focus on that first." And I was like, "Great. Who we working with?" And so they said, "Oh, we're going to do a song with Snoop Dogg." And I'm like, "What?" And they're like, yeah. They had the same video director. And at the time, the management team thought that would be a great crossover. So I got to work that afternoon in the studio and came up with the music. And then the singer turned around and put out some great lyrics. That was shipped off to L.A. Within a couple days, Snoop did his tracks and sent them back. And then I went back to LA, and I got a call, and they said, "Hey, we're going to be doing the album at NRG Studios with Jay Baumgartner." And, Jay had produced Linkin Park, Papa Roach, No Doubt, Bush, like so many amazing artists. And they said, would you come in and record the record with us? So of course I was like, absolutely. So I ended up writing and recording the record with the band, actually toured with them as well for quite a while. And then when we were in the studio, Snoop came in and he dug the track so much, he decided to do the music video with us.
Oh, wow. That's really cool.
Yeah, and that video is up on my website. If you go to Michael Thomas 19, michaelthomas19.com, if you go to the video page, that video is there along with a slew of other videos from all the other bands that I've been in. Oh,
that's really cool. Now, you've been in the music business for a long time now, so I got to ask you, when was that first taste of like, okay, that was amazing. I have this awesome experience under my belt, and I know I'm going to be in this for life. Like, do you remember that moment that told you that you were on the right track?
Yeah, man. You know, it's funny. I ended up, doing the LA circuit for a number of years, kind of working my way up the food chain. Mm-hmm. And I eventually scored a gig with a band that was one of those 80 genres bands called Tough.
Oh, yeah.
And through that band, I ended up making some really, really great friends. But I remember it was a super big time crunch, too, because they thought they had a guitar player secured, and I guess the guy didn't work out. So the singer from Tough, Stevie Rochelle, reached out to me. And literally within like 3 days, maybe less, we had a gig at the House of Blues with Vince Neil.
Oh, wow.
The next night, we had a show at the Viper Room. And then the following day, we were on a plane to the Midwest to start a tour.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So it was super quick, man. But it was awesome. And I knew coming back from that, okay, I got my foot in the door here. And now let's see what happens. Shortly after, I ended up going and doing a tour of Japan with another band that I was working with at the time called Engines of Aggression. Mm-hmm. And they were this really cool kind of industrial band meets kind of like Jane's Addiction. So there was this organic sound and then this really heavy industrial electronic sound to it.
Oh, wow.
And they were on Priority Records. That's the first 2 records came out on Priority. And so we ended up going to Japan, and right before I left for Japan, which I knew was going to be my last tour with Engines of Aggression, I was playing a show with Tough, and a couple of the guys from a band called Beautiful Creatures saw me play, and they approached me after the show, and they said, hey, would you be interested in coming down for an audition for Beautiful Creatures? And their record, their first record had just come out at that time, mm-hmm. and their guitar player had left, DJ Ashba. I don't know if you're familiar with DJ.
Oh, yeah, 100%.
Okay. So DJ had left the band like right before I think the record came out. Mm-hmm. So the record had just really been released. So I ended up coming down to the studio, and I got the gig with Beautiful Creatures, and then everything just kind of snowballed from there.
I wanted to ask you about the Beautiful Creatures specifically because I love that band. And that's how I became familiar with who you were, was through Beautiful Creatures. And obviously after the first record, which had DJ Ashba, you were part of that band for the second record, which is equally as good as the first one. And were you like a fan of them? Did you know who they were? Or was it just kind of one of those chance meetings that just was like, oh yeah, okay, that sounds cool? Or was it one of those like, yeah, I already know you guys, I'd love to?
No, I'd never even heard of the band,
to
be honest with you. Yeah. So I knew Anthony Fox. We had been friends in the LA kind of music circuit for a number of years, and then we lost touch for probably 3 or 4 years. Mm-hmm. And I didn't know anybody else in the band. I hadn't heard the album or anything. So I got approached after I got off stage, mm-hmm. and I was like, yeah, sure. Send me a couple tracks and, I'll come down. So it was just really organic in that sense. I came down, and at that time, Paul Gargano from Metal Edge Magazine was managing the band. Mm-hmm. So I came aboard, and probably like 3 weeks later, we had a show in Vegas and started writing the new record. And for the first part of writing that record, we were in the studio with Beau Hill. And,
Oh, wow.
Bo had done so many amazing artists, like Rat and
Yeah.
Warren and Winger, and he'd written so many hits over the years.
Yeah.
So I really, really enjoyed working with Bo. And then, we were kind of in this limbo where we were looking for a new label and trying to, find a new home for the band. And, Paul was working behind the scenes and taking meetings, but, it just kind of stretched on and on and on. And then I eventually, about a year and a half, 2 years later, ended up leaving the band.
Mhm.
So I know after that, they wrote some more tracks for the record. So I had worked on a handful of those that were on that second record. And then for the Japanese release, I had a handful more that were on that Japanese release.
Oh, wow.
Because the American release had, I think, maybe 12 songs or something. And then the Japanese release had like some bonus tracks. So, yeah, man, it was cool. I specifically remember spending a lot of time in the studio, working on some of those songs for the second record.
Yeah.
So I feel like it's kind of a hodgepodge of songs. Some tracks are mine, some were written after I left. But, we kept in touch over the years and obviously have worked in different incarnations of bands. Joe had Bang Tango, and I worked with him with Bang Tango for a while.
Mm-hmm.
And then when I was out with Faster Pussycat on some of the tours, we had Bang Tango as one of our openers. So it's this crazy little small Hollywood circle. But yeah, that was cool, man. And what's super crazy is after I left Beautiful Creatures, DJ approached me about joining his band. So he and I worked together for about 2 years.
Really?
Yeah. It's because originally he wanted to focus more on singing and playing guitar.
Mm-hmm.
So we just kind of randomly ran into each other at a bar one night in Hollywood. And I had recently left Beautiful Creatures, and I was kind of fielding some offers from some other bands. And we started talking, and I asked him what he was up to. He was working on new material. So he played me some of the stuff, and I thought it sounded great. So I said, hey, man, well, sounds good. Best of luck to you. And a couple of days later, I got a phone call from his manager, and she was like, hey, you want to come down and talk with the band? DJ, thinks you might be a good fit since, you played all the stuff off that first Beautiful Creatures record. So,
Wow.
yeah, I went down there and, ended up moving my gear in like that night. And we started working on tunes. And that's when we were on 10th Street with Alan Kovac. So 10th Street is now, I believe, 11/7 Music that Nikki's, running.
Yeah.
So, yeah, man, I did that for a little while as well. And that was fun. But, there were competing priorities with the management company and the other artists. So I feel like, we were writing all these tunes and we were supposed to go in the studio, but it was like, oh, hey, we're doing this Blondie record, but, you're next. And then it was, oh, we're doing this work with Meatloaf, but then you're next. And then it was, oh, we're doing this Buck Cherry record, but you guys are next.
Oh, wow.
And so for me, it's like, I was like, all right, well, listen, I got to get back out on the road. I got to get back to playing and doing my thing.
Yeah.
So DJ actually went back to just focusing on the guitar, and he brought in a singer. And then I'm not really sure what kind of happened with that afterwards, but he worked on that for a couple of years after I left. So, yeah, man, it's all the weird small Hollywood circle.
Yeah. And you dropped some other, names there too that are, big in that scene with Bang Tango and Faster Pussycat. And you seem to just been keeping yourself crazy busy. So how do you end up with Adler's Appetite?
That's a funny story. I was at a club in LA and just hanging out with some mutual friends. And I was introduced to Robbie Crane, who played bass for a number of bands. He was on the, Vince Neil Exposed record.
Yeah.
And I think the one after that, Robbie had played bass for Rat for a number of years.
Mm-hmm.
Long story short, he was working with Steven, and he approached me and said, oh, hey, I may have a tour coming up and I need a lead guitar player. Would you be interested? And I said, absolutely. I said, give me a call when you have more details. So long story short, I ended up going to Europe with Steven for the very first time This is years ago, man. I mean, honestly, this was like 18 years ago.
Oh, wow.
Maybe more.
Wow.
But it was all Eastern Europe. So it was crazy. Our first date was in Budapest.
Oh, wow.
And from there, we just kept going east. So it was like all Eastern Europe, Budapest, Slovakia, Croatia, Austria.
Jesus.
Then we ended up going to Greece. We played Thessaloniki. And then from there, we went to Istanbul, Turkey.
Jesus.
Which was
this
awesome,
is your first.
dude.
This is your first tour with him ever.
Yeah. First tour with Steven ever.
Wow.
And then from Istanbul, Turkey, we ended up flying back to the Netherlands to do some festivals. And we ended up doing, I think, 3 or 4 festivals in the Netherlands. The last one being this 3-day festival. And it was amazing because it was at the same time when Ian Astbury was singing for the Doors.
Mm-hmm.
You remember that period when he was working with the Doors?
I do.
Yeah, so they were the headliner, and then, God, the bill that day, it was this crazy list of bands, but Rose Tattoo was on the bill, us, then Cheap Trick, then Anthrax.
Wow.
So it was crazy, man, because we were sharing a dressing room with, like, Rose Tattoo and Cheap Trick, and the entire tour that we spent on that bus, Steven used to sit in the back lounge and listen to Cheap Trick's greatest hits. And so the very last show of the tour, here we are doing this festival in the Netherlands with Cheap Trick.
Wow.
And I remember we finished our set and we ran back to the dressing room and we threw our stuff in the dressing room, and then we ran back to the stage because we wanted to catch, Cheap Trick's set. And there's Steven on the side of the stage, and man, he's just got tears in his eyes. He's so happy. And I just remember in between songs, Xander kept coming over and giving him a hug, and Nielsen would come over, and it was so cool, man. It was awesome.
Oh, that's excellent.
So that was like a highlight kind of memory. But here's another weird story. So I don't know, maybe it was like 10 years later, 15 years later, something like that.
Uh-huh.
Cheap Trick was out on tour with Poison and Def Leppard.
Yeah, I remember that.
And they were in Dallas, Texas, and I wasn't living in Dallas at the time, but I happened to be in town. Oh, I was on tour with Faster Pussycat. We were playing Dallas the same night. That's what
okay.
it was. So me and Chad Stewart and Danny Nordahl from Faster went down to the show to go say hi to all those guys. So we got there just in time for Cheap Trick's set, and then afterwards we were standing around backstage, and we were talking with the Cheap Trick guys. And I said, hey, I got this crazy story for you. There was a show in the Netherlands, and Steven Adler from Guns N' Roses was standing on the side of the stage in tears throughout your entire set, and you guys kept coming over and giving him a hug. I said, you guys remember that? And they did, man. It was the craziest thing. He's like, yeah, I totally remember that. He's like, you were there? And I said, yeah, I was playing guitar for Steven. So.
Oh, that's excellent. And that had to kind of be a full circle moment for you to play with Steven, because you said you were a big Guns N' Roses fan growing up, right?
Oh, yeah, man. Huge Guns N' Roses fan.
That had to be just a mind-blowing scenario for you then at that point. I mean, everything you're saying just keeps tying back into itself as like your story progresses.
Yeah. No, I mean, really, really super cool. And talk about full circle, right? And you want to hear another crazy story. It was, I don't know, like 2008 or something like that. I think it was like the 20th anniversary of Appetite for Destruction, or 25th, maybe. God, I can't remember, but it was a big deal. And we were in LA, and for Adler's Appetite, we were playing a show at a place called the Key Club, which is on the Sunset Strip. It used to be Gazzarri's. Gazzarri's was torn down, and then they built a place called the Key Club. So it was this really beautiful venue and a place that I always loved playing. And for that anniversary show, we had a bunch of the guys from GNR come down to rehearsals, and they were going to come up and do, a handful of songs throughout the course of the evening. So Man, it was crazy because it was the first time in whatever it was, how many years, 17 years at that point maybe, that the original guys had played again with Steven.
Oh, wow.
So we had Izzy and Duff down to a lot of rehearsals. And Duff's always been really cool. Like if we happen to be in the same city at the same time, he would always come down and do a song or two with us.
Yeah.
That happened in London one time at the end of one of our European tours. He was doing a book signing in London, and he found out that we were there, and we were able to get in touch, and he came down and got up on stage and did a couple songs with us, which was amazing because nobody in the building knew Duff was there, so the place went bonkers.
Oh, that's
totally
cool.
Bananas when he came out, right? So anyways, we're in rehearsals for this show at the Key Club, and man, it's me and Izzy and Duff and Steven and the rest of the band, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we're launching through some songs, and we start Welcome to the Jungle. And I start the opening riff, and we're maybe like 10, 15 seconds into the song. And Duff holds up his hand, and he's like, whoa, 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 and he stops the song. And he looks at Izzy, and he's like, hey, okay, so what's the chord progression here again? He was just kind of like getting familiarized with the tune, right?
Yeah.
And at that point, it may have been a while since he had played it. I don't know. But he was just kind of like making sure he had the right thing going on.
That's awesome.
And Izzy looks at him. He looks at me. He looks back at Izzy. Izzy's looking at Duff. And he looks at me, and he looks back at Duff. And he says, ask him. And he points at me. And I'm like, dude, if you would have told the 12-year-old kid listening to the Appetite for Destruction record that one day you're going to be in a room with 3/5 of the original Guns N' Roses, and you're going to be going over the opening chords to Welcome to the Jungle with these guys, I'd be like, you're totally crazy. Totally crazy, right? So yeah, dude, it's magical little moments like that just sometimes like it hits you and you stop and you go, wow, like,
yeah.
Did that really happen? You know?
That's really cool, man. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Hey everybody, this is Lauren Marie Taylor, creator and host of the Not the Final Girl podcast. Okay, so every horror fan remembers the final girl, right? You know, the one who can outrun and outsmart the Jasons, the Michaels, the Chuckies. I think you get it. But what about the girls and, yeah, the guys who met with an untimely end? Those of us who were tortured and tripped, dragged and killed. Don't we deserve some props? As Vicky in Friday the 13th Part 2 and Sheila in Girls Night Out, I know what a drag it is to succumb to those masked and wardrobe-challenged killers, to not be the final girl. On my new podcast, I'll be chatting with other women of horror who share the same fate. Special guests include those final girls as well as the writers and directors who created our characters, only to give us an early expiration date. And if they play nice, we'll let some of those crazed killers of horror tell their side of the story. So join me, Lauren Marie Taylor, on the Not the Final Girl podcast. Be sure to hit that subscribe button so you get the alerts when the episodes drop. Thanks for listening. Keep your doors locked and stay out of the woods.
So I want to talk about your new single too, but before I get to that, now I could be wrong on this, but you own your own clothing line, right?
Yeah, you know, I was really active with the clothing line for a number of years. Now I'm trying to get back into it, and every now and then, like I'll throw out little pieces here and there. Mm-hmm. So the idea is actually to kind of get back into it. The clothing line that I had for a number of years was called Johnny Ringo, and I would like to get back into it. It's just, man, there's only so many hours in the day, right? And I'm trying to find time for everything. But yes, I was heavily involved in that. And then, you know, there was one point in between tours where I did like a lot of freelance artwork, and I ended up actually doing a lot of designs for companies like Urban Outfitters and stuff like that.
Oh, wow.
I had my designs in their stores.
Oh, that's really cool. I had no idea.
Yeah.
That's awesome. So tell the listeners, what is the Vampire Karate Club?
Well, that's exactly what I was just talking about. So, you know, I'll throw out new pieces every now and then just to see if anything sticks. And the Vampire Karate Club was an idea that I had a little while ago but I just love the name. I love the moniker. Originally, when I had relocated to Dallas, I was thinking about starting a club here and kind of doing like a once a month residency where I had different guest artists come up and do a night full of covers. Mm-hmm. So that was the original idea for the Vampire Karate Club, but it kind of blossomed into my own thing and my own brand, which is really kind of special and cool because now on all my guitar picks I have Vampire Karate Club branding and VKC, and it's really cool because when I throw them out at shows now, people are putting that together and making the connection with Michael Thomas and the Vampire Karate Club. I also did a line of shirts. I did a first batch run, and I used to wear them, and I still do at a lot of the shows, and touring throughout the year with Steven and other artists. And I've had a number of people now, inquire about the line. So that is actually a priority for me for 2023 to start getting some new pieces out for, the Vampire Karate Club, mm-hmm. and offering those online for people.
Awesome. Very cool. And that's a great segue into your new music video, speaking of vampires, and that's Take Me. And such a great song, catchy song, and it gets stuck in your head once you hear it, and you just have to keep listening to it. So I just wanted to plug that and just have you talk about, I know it's brand new, it just came out a few weeks ago. Is there more coming, or what's going on with that?
Yeah, actually there's a lot more coming, and I appreciate the compliment on the song. Yeah, that's the first release, and there's going to be a number more on the heels of that one. Mm-hmm. I love that track. It's got this really cool hybrid of rock, and there's just kind of this modern element to it as well. And it's just one of those big kind of anthemy choruses, like you said, it gets stuck in your head, right? And I just felt like it was always a really catchy, just really cool, upbeat tune. So I wanted to lead off with that because earlier in the year, I released a cover of a song called What's on Your Mind by Information Society. Mm-hmm. And that was a tune that I remember as a kid. I loved that song, and I always wanted to do like a guitar-heavy version of that. So if you go to my YouTube page, I released that back in January. So I feel like Take Me has the same production value as What's on Your Mind, where sonically and stylistically they kind of fall in the same range. So it just felt like the next natural song to release, and I really wanted to get out some new music because a lot of times you get caught up writing for other artists, and then your own stuff kind of falls by the wayside, you know?
Yeah.
So with releasing the song, man, I was really big on doing a video. And in thinking about the song, the lyrical content and everything, I came up with this story. And I just had this vision of this Bonnie and Clyde type of video and story, but with this crazy twist. And if you watch the video, then you know exactly what that twist is.
Yes.
And from the start of the video, it's probably the last thing you thought, that video was going to take a turn on. So I like the fact that it's not a performance video. And I've seen, obviously, everybody puts out a music video and it's all performance. And, there'll be a little bit of story element, then it cuts back to the band playing. Mm-hmm. For this first one, I really wanted to tell a story. And I wanted to tell that story from start to finish. And it was a big story to tell in 3 minutes and 49 seconds. So that was the challenge, right? And I also knew that if I farmed it out to somebody else, I'm going to be limited on revisions. I'm going to be limited to the kind of artistic vision and seeing things through and keeping it kind of pure, right? So with, a lot of my music, I write all of it. And I also perform all of it. So, when thinking about the song, that is completely pure in its artistic vision. I wrote everything, I sang everything, I performed everything. So I really wanted the same hands-on control with the video. So I ended up doing that video myself, me and my partner in crime, my girlfriend, my very talented girlfriend, who is a phenomenal photographer and journalist in her own right.
Wow.
We just decided to take on the challenge and do it ourselves.
Wow.
So, we ended up filming, editing, color grading, doing everything ourselves and having complete control, which was amazing. And at the end of the day, it was like this whole other mountain that we climbed. You know, it's like, it's one thing to write the song. It's one thing to perform it, record it, sing it, mix it, master it. That's a whole element to it, right? But then you have the visual on the other side. And I've always been very artistic. I've done a lot of, design work, as I said, from clothing line stuff to other graphics. I mean, you name it. So yeah, we just decided to take on the challenge and do it ourselves. And with the story and the release, like the timing of the single right at Halloween, it was just like perfect timing to tell that kind of story. So, super stoked to get that out and, be able to get some new music and some new video material out before the end of the year.
No, it's on YouTube, as we mentioned, but you can also get it on Apple and Spotify, correct?
That's correct.
Okay, so I guess that segues me into the next thing I want you to do is just plug all your social media and like your YouTube channel, your website, all that stuff, so that everybody knows what you got going on and where they can catch you next and when the next songs are coming.
Absolutely. So the best place to find everything as a one-stop shop would be my website, which is michaelthomas19.com. So that's michaelthomas19.com. On there, you'll find everything from tour dates, the latest news, links to videos, a video page, and soon to be online store for all your Vampire Karate Club needs. Also, all the links to my social media as far as Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. Usually my handle is pretty much the same all the way across. So for Facebook, it's Michael Thomas 19. Now for Instagram, it's a little different. It's Michael Thomas. Michael Thomas 19 wasn't available, so I had to go with the next best thing. But the website is really the best place to get all the updated info, all the tour dates, and everything Michael Thomas.
All right, very cool. And speaking of, gigs and tours, do you have any upcoming gigs and tours that you wanted to promote before we wrap things up?
Absolutely, man. So the next gig was Steven Adler, and I'm looking at the calendar right now because I don't know all this info offhand, but I can tell you the next couple of dates. So I believe it is January 1/18/23. That's Rockfest in Key West, Florida. But on the 20th, Rise Rooftop in Houston, Texas. And then March 31st, we're at the Bergen Performing Arts Center in Englewood, New Jersey. And then April 14th, we are at the Credit Union of Texas. And that is the event center in Allen, Texas. And then we're also, I believe, going to be on some good summer festivals this year. And I think that we possibly maybe seeing everybody at M3. I can't confirm that yet.
Oh, okay.
But the big M3 festival in Maryland,
yes.
I believe we may be making a trip back to M3 this year.
Oh, very cool. Well, then maybe I'll see you there because I plan on going this year too.
Perfect. You got to let me know.
I sure will. Hey, thank you for doing this, man. This was really cool. You have a great story.
Oh, hey, my pleasure, man. It's great speaking with you. And then if you do end up going out to that festival, if we cross paths there, I'll bring you a Vampire Karate Club t-shirt.
Oh, that would be amazing. Amazing. Man, I got to tell you, I got to have you back on because I do a lot of, when I'm not doing interviews, I'll do like just certain episodes on Kiss, and I always get like special guests to come on and talk about it with me, and I'll have to hit you up for one of those.
Absolutely. Just let me know when.
All right. Sounds good. Thank you, man. Have a good night.
All right, Robbie. Thanks.
To fortune and fame, there is no surrender, no rule you won't break, but those things you want, they aren't always what you need. When you go, I wanna make steps in your stride, chasing Lucy across the sky, fire down a light, won't you please take me
All right, rockers, once again, Michael Thomas. Man, these rock and roll guys, they just have these stories that just keep coming full circle, and it's inspiring, and it's so much fun. And it reminds me of why I started this podcast. Stories like that, these guys that just, they come up loving certain bands and certain music, and then out of nowhere, they are involved in these bands and in that scene, and it's so cool, and it really keeps me going with all the things that I'm doing to hear these guys tell their stories. So check him out, visit his website, get yourself some t-shirts, and watch for the tour, and go up to him and let him know that you heard him on the All Bets Are Off podcast. So thank you, Michael. Appreciate you, and thank you, listeners, and we will catch you next week.
The preceding presentation has been brought to you by the Gear Network.